Welcome to Keeping the Beat, an engaging web series hosted live by Tennessee Music Education Association in partnership with the CMA Foundation. Thank you to everyone that has been tuning in. This is our 61st show, and our last and 62nd show will be this Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. We hope you've enjoyed learning from and interacting with music professionals from around the globe, representing every facet of the vast world of music. Today is Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. My name is Alexis Hutuja-Sterryberry, and I am the music specialist at Las Casas Elementary and the president of the Tennessee Music Education Association. Tonight, we will discuss responding to COVID-19, a conversation with Tennessee Collegiate Music Department chairs and the state coordinator of fine arts. We encourage you to interact by replying to this live video stream with your questions and comments. One disclaimer, while this is being streamed live, it will remain on the Keeping the Beat Facebook page for future reference. So as such, your comments will also remain a part of the archive. Before we start, I'd like to introduce TMEA's president-elect, Dr. Ryan Fisher. You'll give a wave, Dr. Fisher. He is the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs for the College of Communication and Fine Arts at the University of Memphis, and our immediate past president, Mr. Leif Cook, who is the Director of Bands at Dobbins-Bennett High School in Kingsport, Tennessee. All right, Leif, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thanks, Alexis. We've got an incredible panel of higher education administrators who represent the Tennessee Association of Music Executives at colleges and universities from every corner of our state, and I'm thrilled to introduce them to you tonight. Representing Austin Peay University is Dr. Eric Branscombe. From Lee University is Dr. William Green. From Martin Methodist College is Dr. Jennifer Adam. From Middle Tennessee State University, Dr. Jennifer Vanetta Hall. Dr. Kelly Brown is here representing Milligan University. From Rhodes College is Dr. Carol Blankenship. From Tennessee Tech University is Dr. Wendy Mullen and Dr. Colin Hill. Representing UT Knoxville is Dr. Jeff Pappas. And from the University of Tennessee at Martin is Dr. Julie Hill. We're also excited to have our wonderful, hardworking Tennessee Department of Education Fine Arts Coordinator, Mr. Todd Shipley, with us today as well. We're going to begin the program by turning it over to Dr. Branscombe, who will start a conversation about some general safety ideas and protocols across all levels of music classrooms. Eric?
Thank you very much. The first thing I'd like to share is I'm going to share my screen, and what you're going to see is a nearly completed draft of a document that a lot of the different colleges are developing for their own sake. And it's just kind of an agreement between faculty and students, a pledge, if you will, about the safety protocols that everybody will take once they come into the building. And so I understand this would look differently at a K-12 campus, where instead of students signing this, you might talk with your parents or band booster, or choir booster, or orchestra booster associations. But the document starts with some general expectations, and the expectations you're seeing here are based on Austin Peay standards. And so every campus is going to have a little bit of a differentiation on their expectations. And again, this document might even change based on the standards or the expectations that were released just yesterday from the research. So as the research changes, so too will this document. But after some general expectations, we encourage everyone to think through the specifics of your campus, of your facility, of everything that you have. At the college level, we have practice rooms. So there are some safety protocol measures that we have in place for the practice rooms. Anytime you have a multi-use classroom space where chairs and stands are going to be moved around a lot, or percussion equipment moved around a lot, or risers, recommending spike tape or purchasing a 6-foot pole, something along those lines, so that setup and tear down can happen very quickly without having to remeasure safety distance between everything. A lot of new information coming out about locker rooms, how to get a lot of people in and out of a small space quickly and safely. For the college level, we have advising appointments, which is not something that K-12 would have to deal with too much. Use of copy rooms. So if you have student workers who use copy rooms to get music or anything ready, what does that look like? How many students need to be in there at a time? And then what we have set up around our building, Zoom stations, places for students to go to participate in their online classes. Specifically, if there's an online class that takes place in the middle of the day where students only have a short amount of time between their classes. The signature page is kind of a key point here, where this is something that we encourage someone legal to read and overview a document of this such, because it does, in a sense, become kind of a legal document, and minors would not be able to sign something like this on their own. It would come down to the parents signing that document. But again, it's just kind of a pledge and understanding and agreement between students and faculty. And a document like that, again, would be different based on what you have, what you don't have. And so that's kind of where we are addressing this as a general idea for safety.
And Dr. Branscombe, I'll mention for our high school band colleagues who are going back to band camp sometimes 2 and 3 weeks before traditional classes begin, this same sort of document would really help them establish protocols with their kids who are spending as many hours at a band camp day as maybe they would or more as regular school day.
Does anyone want to add anything to just general safety concerns before we move on to elementary? Okay. Alexis, you want to take over there?
For elementary, I'm still, of course, waiting for the document to come out from the University of Colorado. I just found out today I'm going to be on a cart, which I expected. And I am just planning on continuing to watch and wait for the documents to come out and more research. I'm going to record myself singing so that we can still do singing games and do some audiation, loop those so we can do our games. I have also looked up what cleaners actually work. My county has purchased cleaner for every classroom that has a 4-minute kill time. And so I'll be using that on my ballots and other things that I decide to use, synthetic heads on my drums. So I think there are definitely ways to still make this happen, even if we're facing all kinds of things. And we're just going to have to be ready to adapt and make changes. And we're all here to share ideas. So if you need some ideas, I know I'm happy to share. Dr. Hall and Dr. Branscombe, I'm sure, are also happy to share ideas. Do you guys have any ideas or things you'd like to share for elementary music? Let's go with Dr. Branscombe first.
Sure. At the elementary level, there's a lot of concern about movement because of the closer interaction. It's hard to move and stay socially distanced. So I've seen a lot of ideas where students hold on to scarves instead of holding hands, or students hold on to Lumi sticks, or just go buy some cheap dowel rods. So again, the students can feel that give and take, participate in movement activities. That, in what I've seen, that's kind of been one of the larger areas of concerns. And what Alexis has already mentioned, shared instruments. Recorders, stick those suckers in the cafeteria dishwashers. I feel like that might be the quickest, safest, and hottest way to sanitize those things. Obviously, plastic recorders.
Excellent. I know I'm planning on doing a lot of listening maps, doing move-its that don't create aerobic breathing. So doing a lot of those sort of activities with my students, as well as some social and emotional learning. Dr. Hill, do you have any suggestions for elementary? Dr. Hall, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. I could see Dr. Hill kind of getting flustered up there.
I don't have my glasses.
With movement, Dr. Branscombe mentioned scarves and there's paper plates. I'd also probably do more this year with non-locomotor movement, because once kids engage in locomotor movement, the social distancing is very difficult to manage. So if I were in the elementary classroom this fall, I would do a bit more with non-locomotor movement, where we're teaching the children to glue their feet, keeping their feet still and moving from the waist up, and doing some things like that. So that would be my my recommendation to with movement activities in this season that we're in.
Excellent. I did want to mention that there is a curriculum called Fun with Composers, and it has great listening maps that the students can follow. They can then create their own, so we can still create, perform, respond, and connect, even though we're going through this. So excellent ideas. Dr. Hall, do you want to talk about secondary general music?
Sure. So if we keep along and thinking about the artistic processes of create, perform, respond, connect, performing is something that I don't see as much of in secondary general music. I wish I could see more of that, but I think that the reality with the folks who teach secondary general music at the middle and high school level, we're not seeing as much performing. If there is performing and we're doing any singing, I would engage in humming. I would engage in masked singing. I would not engage in full-on singing in a full classroom with the students. In regard to responding, connecting, and creating, this is a really great opportunity because we might be ramping down the performance aspect in a general music setting. This is a great opportunity for us to think as educators outside the box and prompt our students to compose. Maybe they're using technology, maybe they're using iPads, maybe they're using percussion instruments. Alexis mentioned sanitizing percussion mallets and drum heads and things like that. That's extremely important. If you have the numbers of mallets on hand, I might even think about designating a set of mallets per student. I know that's what we're going to do at the university level. But now we don't have as many students that are coming through as middle and high schoolers are. So that would certainly be an issue. But I would really take the opportunity to do more with responding, listening lessons, connecting to history, literature, cultures, doing some world music pedagogy. There's some really great resources on the Smithsonian Folkways website where you can access ready-made units on world music all over the world. You just click in an interactive map and it takes you to Paraguay or China, a province in China, and you can find these ready-made lesson plans where students are moving to music of that culture, listening to music of that culture. That's another great resource for you to tap in to connect and do some other music outside of folk and classical music.
I was thinking with my older students, I'm going to have them maybe create a podcast about different composers or different types of music. So I think there's so many other things that we can do. It's a great time to worry and concentrate on process over product, which I know we always feel a lot of pressure to get those performances perfect, but what a great time to work on process instead in our classroom. We do have a couple of questions. I'm gonna throw those out there, guys. Carrie Radcliffe says, is there a concern about recorders and the airstream spreading the virus like traditional band instruments? I'm gonna wait. Personally, I'm just going to not play recorder. I'm going to wait until there's more information and data on that. I'm going to stick to my ukuleles that I know how to clean. I'm going to stick to even looking into buying individual dowel rods for students to have, like Dr. Hall mentioned. So they'll have those and they can bring their own dowel rods, tiny for the instruments, as well as just classroom instruments that I know I can clean safely. That's what I'm going to do. But Dr. Branscombe is right. You can absolutely put those suckers in the cafeteria cleaner, and it works really great. And the cafeteria people love seeing you come down there. At least my ladies do. But I'm going to hold off for a little bit. And then we have another question that says, what if your district has mandated that no instruments can be used because of concerns with sharing or exposure? I totally understand that. My plan would be movement. Lots of move-its. If you aren't familiar with those, are fantastic. All of them are non-locomotor. A lot of listening, also a lot of creating. I think it's a great time to do creating and distanced distance centers with your kids. So that's my thought of what I'm going to do. Dr. Branscombe, do you have any other thing to add to that?
Body percussion, and going back to what Jennifer Vanetta Hall said, exploring non-locomotor movement and percussive noises that can be made during non-locomotor movement in the style of Bobby McFerrin, maybe. A lot of good opportunities there.
Excellent. I'm also going to dig into my children's book library and get into my song tales, record myself singing that, or use a quality recording of the song tales, and just a time to jump into things that I haven't had a chance to do in a while. So it's a good challenge to look for. All right, I think we're going to move on and discuss some instrumental playing. Leif, do you have some things to add about instrumental ensembles?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the mind-blowing topic. I think really that especially high school, middle school band directors have been struggling with since March 13th, frankly, trying to figure out what it means. And you spend your career trying to grow your band program, and now you look at those numbers and you try and you're like, why did I do this? How are we going to make all this work? And I'm not going to, so Alexis, if you'll bring up the study and just kind of slowly scroll through it, screen share and show folks, the University of Colorado study that came out on Monday is really detailed, but is very preliminary. And so we're in week one, the results week one of what's going to end up being a 5-month study. And so these are all contributing organizations. We kind of whiz bang through there, Alexis, to where they kind of see the technology aspects. And it was really intriguing to hear the way this all was accomplished. But I'm not going to try and speak to you about the science behind it. I'll plug a webinar that's going to occur on Wednesday. The two major sponsoring organizations of the study are the National Federation of High Schools and the CBDNA, the College Band Directors National Association. And the CBDNA president, Mark Speed, and James Weaver, the director of NFHS, are going to do a webinar tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And you should definitely sign on to it because in addition to hearing the science behind the results, limited results, and let's be very clear about that, preliminary results, but hearing the science behind it is intriguing. And then the opportunity to ask questions regarding application of the results, I think will be really important for folks. And we'll make sure that the Zoom link hasn't been sent out yet, so don't start looking for it. But as soon as we hear about the Zoom link being live, we'll make sure that we get that on the Keeping the Beat Facebook page and the TMEA Facebook page and website as well. But what they did, so they did this study and they just measured the aerolization of the air, both with instruments mitigated, instruments playing in a normal fashion, and then not playing your instrument at all. You see in that screen right there, sit and do nothing. And they measured what happens at that point. And then they even had each instrumentalist read a script so that they could compare what normal speaking would be like. And it's really fascinating. The news in general is pretty good, but still we need to be cautious. But some instruments, I remember hearing the flute was going to be the world's worst instrument in the spreading of the aerolization of the air in front of the player. And it turns out that really wasn't true. And not to get too much into the science, but I just found this fascinating. Because the flute doesn't blow across a moist surface, you're not blowing across a wet reed or you're not buzzing your lips into a mouthpiece, the air in front of the player isn't as contaminated because there isn't as much moisture in what's produced. And so the flute ended up being not as bad as was once worried. But if you'll go, see if you can find page 42 there, Alexis, if your screen is showing you page numbers. And that's where it gets into the considerations. And the results are kind of what we thought. That they're suggesting all the same social distancing parameters that we knew would be in place. They're even saying trombone players should, instead of being 6 feet, they should be 9 feet front to back, because when you put it in 7th position, the opportunity for contaminated moisture to get further than 6 feet exists. I think one of the fascinating things, and at my school at Dobbins Bennett, we've already made the purchase and ordered the materials needed, but they were really surprised at how well you could mitigate the spread of contaminated air by putting what amounts to a mask over the end of a brass instrument. And so they used just nylon hosiery material to make bell covers for brass instruments, and that made a tremendous difference. One of the big considerations that was a piece of the study was how long your classes are. And so there's an exponential increase in the potential of exposure, obviously the longer the class is, but it's pretty dramatic how quickly that arc accelerates after an hour. And so for those of you who might be on block classes, that's the thing you're going to want to consider, versus if you're on a traditional sort of singleton skinny class, you may be in a little better shape on how you adapt to that. We're going to talk later in this webinar presentation about some of the things you can do to try and gobble up space so that you can spread your kids out. But that is the bottom line. One of the things that we're all looking at doing is playing outside more. Oh, and for our choral colleagues, interestingly, we were not expecting any information about singing. And the study did release some preliminary information about what the real results for singing might be here in a few weeks. But there was some really interesting information about singing. And so the webinar tomorrow night at 8 is definitely for our choral colleagues as well, because there's some implications that come from the work they've already done to look at all that. But the opportunity to still meet your large ensemble instrumental classes exists. Of course, that always comes down to creativity, the things you can do that aren't related to actually playing the instrument and still provide a meaningful opportunity for kids to grow as musicians. And to Alexis's and others' points earlier, I mean, I know we know all of this. We look at things like this as an opportunity to find ways to de-emphasize the incredible performance pressure that exists in a high school band program. I mean, you're having to do a major ball game performance usually 2 weeks into school. And so take an opportunity to rethink everything you do under safe parameters. And so hopefully folks can add, I mean, it's just a huge question about how do we safely return to large ensemble classrooms, music classrooms. And so maybe the answering of questions will be a better way to hit some concerned spots. But my takeaways from the initial information the study had to do with mitigating through covering the bells of brass instruments. The social distancing thing was always a component of it. They are suggesting that students wear masks with holes in the mask for the embouchure, and that there's a dramatic difference in spread in that scenario. You see there the picture of the tent. They said that outdoor playing in the sun has a mitigating factor in killing the virus is number 1. Playing outdoors in a covered space is number 2. And then if you need to be indoors, that's the least ideal setting. They are recommending that bands traditionally set up in arcs, but they're very much recommending that the social distance setup of an ensemble be in straight lines. There's a lot of information in this document about more than a band director ever wanted to know about your HVAC system in your school or building. But there's a lot of information about how you can ask questions of your facilities management folks and get answers about, what your HVAC systems are doing for your classroom and how quickly the air completely turns over in your room. And that's a component as well that others on this in this group may be able to speak to in more detail. But if you've got classes bumping right up, as most of us do, right up one after the other, the opportunity to meet students in alternating classes in different locations, just simply to let the air in your classroom all run through the HVAC system is of benefit for sure. And I'll ask others in the choral world here on this call that they maybe can address some of the setup things that are being considered for the choral world.
I think that passes on to Jeff.
A lot of what Leif just said is going to obviously come into the choral ward as well. The one thing I want to mention is that we can continue to sing during this. There are opportunities for this, but the key is going to be 2 things. if you're worrying about COVID spread. One is the length of time that you're together in that room. After about 30 minutes, there is going to be a haze or a dust no matter what. And you also have to know what your HVAC system is doing. And we've done that at UT Knoxville already early in the study. We actually know what they call the CFM of every room. How quickly will that room give new air to people in there? And it's about every 43 minutes. And I know it's easy for us to rearrange courses. I'd really like to say something and really hinge on what Leif said. And that's to say that it may be that you're going to have to figure out what to do with your class not in that room, because I would not put choral groups back to back to back to back. And I know you can't extend your day. You can't come 8 o'clock at night and come on Saturdays like we can in college. And no one's really excited about that either. But I just really want to be careful, because I think we saw in Washington when the choral world really got hit early on by that church choir. If you haven't heard that, just put Seattle COVID church choir. It can just do this. I mean, it is just completely, it's going to be a storm. So we really want to be careful with that. A lot of what Leif said is excellent. There's another study coming out from Colorado State for singers. There's also another study coming out from ACDA. ACDA says they'll have one out on July 25th. Colorado State's now saying we're going to need a couple more weeks, but this is going to be ongoing. We're going to learn a lot about this even for future, hopefully not for pandemic use, but for other uses. The only thing I want to say beyond this, there's actually two things, and I'll start with the first one. You've got to understand that anything you do during this time that benefits the study of music to your kids is going to be beneficial. Do not sit there and act like you've got to hit home runs every day. I'm not saying let your foot off the pedal. You've really got to make sure, though, that we are under different circumstances than our beloved English teachers or history teachers or PE teachers. We as musicians have we've got a concern on our hands, because what we do, as Leif said, is aerosols come out of our body. We used to think it was droplets. Now they're talking about the particulates. I mean, it gets crazy. So just know that anything you do to further music in this time is going to be beneficial. The second thing is, again, it's not product over process anymore. It's all about process, perhaps. We're thinking at the UT not even to have concerts, definitely during the first semester, if not the whole year. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to change our objectives. And does that mean, who knows? I mean, you really can just do what you want to do. There are a lot of good research documents out there. I believe we've got them in our TAMAQ document. But if they're not, please reach out to any of us. I will say this on behalf of all my colleagues. We've been meeting every Wednesday. We are all here to help you. You can help us. Hey, this worked for us. Try it, because it's going to help us educate the musicians that we're bringing out to you as music educators. But in changing the objectives, what does that mean? I know one school in Texas, for instance, he was a band director, gave his entire class from when they were off from March to May to create a handbook, a virtual handbook for the band. So if you're a clarinetist, here's what you need to do to start in clarinet. Why not do that in choir? We talked about composition. We've talked about a lot of things here that I think we can take over into the choral world. And I don't want to take a lot of time. I'm happy to take questions, but do reach out to us, because there's a lot of things that we can do creatively that are not product oriented. The final thing, if anyone comes up to you, because I've heard this from a lot of people high up in the UT system, why can't we do the Brady Bunch choir? We have 100 singers and they all sing. I will tell you that the first one that came out that was 3 minutes in length, we looked into it. It took 100 hours to produce. It's just not going to work. So you can tell them the Brady Bunch choir looks really, really good, but it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money. So maybe you've got that. Congratulations. We're not even going that route at UT. So any questions, please feel free to ask, but I don't want to. I think that's about good enough on the choral world, unless some of my great colleagues here, if I've missed something, or let me know you need to add something to it. But always open to questions. And remember, hit solid singles every day during this pandemic. We'll be better off for it.
Well, I get to follow Jeff. That's awesome. And Leif. That was great. No, I mean, and a lot of the things that we have sort of on our internal agenda here are going to be covered, I think, before we get to them, which is wonderful. So Leif presented a lot of new information, and Jeff, a lot of things there that cross over. And I wanted to sort of transition into my topic is talking about safety and health for your program, which has been everybody's major concern. And we've already talked about that a lot. But some of what's just been said and by Jeff is this is certainly, and and we're all talking about this, but just to say, since we're on this program together, this is a time to push those bounds of things that we have thought were wrong for years. I mean, COVID is awful. It's terrible. People are dying, and some people just still don't realize that. But with those limitations and restrictions that are being imposed on us for the safety of everyone's welfare, there is this tremendous opportunity to break the status quo, to break the stereotypes, to break the expectations that have, frankly, in some cases, been masochistic for some programs. We build up events, we add, we try to assess and take away, but it seems like we just add. And so, as Jeff said, maybe we don't need to have concerts, and certainly they don't need to be as long because there's not the time to rehearse the repertoire with the creative scheduling, and students have to have time to sanitize and get to and from where our spaces are created. They might be farther apart, they might be hot, and we don't want these students to be under any more stress, or us, or faculty or staff, than they already are. So it's a time to step back and go, maybe we could combine a concert and have 3 groups play together and only do 10 minutes each. And maybe we could play outside, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, so that it becomes an opportunity for folks to hear us that would never have come in our music buildings. Maybe it's a time to actually learn music instead of working for the contest. So process, again, instead of product. And I'm sure we won't stick with all these, but I know there's a lot of things as an administrator, and we all are, that have already broken down that required 25 signatures on campus that are now a bloop, and should have been that way and asked for it for years, and now magically they made it happen. So just to try and seize upon those things that can be an opportunity while we have that chance to do it. On the flip side of that, in transitioning to safety, all of us and everybody listening, I know too, I have had no break this summer, and I guarantee you everyone on this Zoom call has had 0 time off. It has been intense and relentless, because we're trying to do our jobs. Everybody's trying to do their jobs and prepare, and then boom, boom. Even since we met this group last week, a major shift, another study comes out. And with all the hundreds of hours this summer extra of preparing for this, in a second, we might be told everybody's got to be online. Numbers in the South are going up. So it's easy to think that's all for naught. And the people that have been helping me, this group, of course, we're all helping each other. And then our staff at our various universities and our colleagues in K through 12 education. I think you just have to know that even if that does happen, and that's certainly a possibility, that we are going to be able to transition at some point, and then all of this information will be valid and relevant. I think a large challenge, and I don't want to get into anything political here, but we can do everything in the world, but if our kids and our people are around folks that won't wear a mask and think this isn't real, it's going to be a repeating cycle that we can never escape. I went to a board meeting today in downtown Union City, and I was the only person of 14 that had on a mask and was 6 feet away from the board meeting table. And these are movers and shakers. And I was like, wow, I thought that I just said, I'm sorry, I'm going to social distance if y'all could speak loudly. And they were like, no problem. But that just still amazed me. So just to say, I think that is going to be a real challenge if we don't mandate that at the state level or at the national level. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, how we educate our community better, because there's just so many different pockets in every community. We're all in different, some in metropolitan areas, which I think tend to be a little bit better. I mean, I've talked to a lot of you about this. I'm in a very rural area. So it just takes longer for people to actually, hopefully they will, but that's a nice transition piece. So I'm going to talk about a few things here with health and safety, and I think some of these have been covered, so I'll just glance over them briefly. But creative scheduling is something we've been talking about for a long time. In terms of, divide your class in half, maybe one group meets one day, another meets another day, and then we have an assignment that gets back to that positive aspect of really learning to play or sing your instruments and better than you've ever had time to do. So learning that wind ensemble piece or that choral piece or that orchestra piece by recording yourself practicing instead of having just that in-person ensemble time. So creative scheduling, which can be done in some cases pretty easily. We've been able to do a lot of that internally without even changing it. And we use a system called Banner. A lot of, public schools are going to use different programs for that. But still, a lot of that's been easier than I thought it would be. instrument storage has been a major concern, and Eric said that initially. And then with storage, that's problematic with student lockers and instrument storage area, but also with marching band if we do end up being able to come back. And we have instruments that can't go in the metal Connex 40-foot trailers. All of them can't. So trying to figure out what can be stored in there that doesn't have to be climate controlled to spread out the storage space. But then also just even the actual flow of tandemed trailers versus ones set back to back, because then students are bunched up at the back of the trailers. So even just recently, we looked at this yesterday and flipping around this way so that the load, it doesn't take up so much space, but the load in is separate in terms of the back one entry of the trailer. So that was a little discovery just as recently as yesterday. Those storage trailers are not very expensive. I think the price I have on one for two 40-foot Connex storage trailers, including delivery, 4-month rental fee, which probably needs to be longer, pickup and delivery is $1,200. Now that's significant, but that might be a COVID expense that a program would pick up to help with some storage of brass instruments, at least, and other equipment items needed for outdoor rehearsals that don't involve climate controlled areas.
I'll interrupt you, Julie, to say many band programs are talking about not using uniforms for obvious reasons, but you've got a room somewhere in your band hall that's storing a ton of uniforms. Get them in one of these Connex trailers as long as it's moisture proof, and you've just freed up a space.
Absolutely, Leif. Good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to mention too, I know this is not possible everywhere, but we all work, and everybody listening works with dedicated colleagues who, even though it's the summer right now, I mean, we're all on 12-month contract, but there are teachers and faculty out there that know we need help. And so we recently formed a very small ad hoc health and safety committee. And some of them helped me that were away. You know, there were families in other states. They helped via Zoom with the creative scheduling aspect, because we could do that electronically and on Zoom and with a Google Sheet. And then I've got a group, a very small group that's here, that's in town, that's local to where we are. And they know, like Eric was just saying, he was crawling around on his hands and knees today, taping off his music technology and piano area. We need help. We can't do all this stuff by ourselves, or I can't. I've got just that type of thing. So we formed a little health and safety group, and that has been a real asset, because, you know, it's like, okay, director of bands, can you get the tape dispenser and help do that room? And marching band director, can you do that? Choir director. And it's a comfort to have those folks help tape off the desks or whatever it is, if you're reconfiguring and respacing some things. So consider getting yourself some help. I just want to say that because it's stressful right now. It is so stressful, and we are all human. And so if you have, and yeah, you might not need to ask those folks in a regular time to ask to help because they're not on contract, but they want to meet this fall. They want to be safe, and they want to be safe, and they want your kids to be safe. So consider getting yourself some help. I want to also mention that the best member of my team, of this health and safety team, is our custodian. If you have a custodian in your building, I know we all know to befriend our custodians and our administrative staff more than anything, and that's so true. Truer words have never been spoken, but right now, if you have a custodian, they probably have insider information that you do not have. I talked to my custodian, David, and I was like, he didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know what he was doing. And that he's on our health and safety committee now, and he's like pumped. He's like, I'm on the committee. And he comes, we have the meetings when he can be, when he's on his regular shift, and he talks. I'm like, David, can you give us an update on what the night crew's doing? He's like, yeah, they're setting off bombs every night. But if people are coughing, they can do it every other night or every week, but we'd rather people cough and live. And I'm like, good point. But I didn't know he was wiping down all the doorknobs in the building and all the surfaces. And we would have been trying to do that ourselves or getting students to do it, it's always good to clean more, but there were lots of things he was doing. He didn't know that we were looking at getting a tent to space out in different places across campus. And so he appreciated that communication from me as well. And we talk every day now, and we always did say hi, but we didn't talk about, cleaning supplies and the process unless it was honor band time. So I just wanted to mention if you're lucky enough to have a custodian, and most are, reach out to that team and let them know what you need too. They're willing to ask for things because they want to feel valuable and a part of the team process as well. Pathways, I think most everyone by this point, this might not even need to be discussed, but just marking those hallways, we've seen them in our Lowe's and our Walmarts across the nation. If you're lucky enough to have a better grocery store, good for you. We are not. Entry and exits of rehearsal spaces, just so critical to limit those number of spaces. That document Eric showed earlier, just having a set number of people that could be in a room at the same time and determining that for each space depending on the size and putting it into your safety protocol document. And all of our spaces are different, so everybody's just got to look at the standards and use your own judgment there. But I think that's important. One of the early calls that we had with this group, someone said, you know, we can't be the sheriffs. We have to have students and faculty, staff that will police themselves, which means it's on us as managers to define what that is and to make it visible, to make it clear. But then we can't walk around with our little 6-foot stick, like popping people all the time. We've got to have folks get on board and self-police or we're going to really be stressed and not sleep. A couple other just quick things. We've talked about instrument storage. Rehearsal setups is next on the list. I know all of us have looked at everything from students having their own little square with their chair and their instrument and their stand for the semester. And that's problematic because that takes another secure, large space that no one's using, which is just not happening right now. Everybody needs large spaces. So just determining that safe setup, whether it's for choir or for band or for orchestra or whatever ensemble, chamber ensemble it is, and marking that clearly and then assigning those students to those spaces for as long as is needed with the cleaning protocol in place. I think everyone knows to do that. Leif, comment, please.
We had sharing of music stands is such a common practice in a traditional band or orchestra classroom. We had tremendous success putting out there in the world that we wanted alumni to donate their little school wire music stand that you get when you're in the 6th grade and start band. And and so that's a thing to try and get wire music stands that you can use to make sure kids don't share.
That's awesome. I've got to just, go ahead, Wendy.
I think one interesting thing too that was in that study is the recommendation for people not to have to use their voices too much as ensemble directors. If there's any possibility that you could have some sort of speaker system and a microphone to speak into so that you can just stay at conversation level, that can be a big help as well with safety.
I'm monopolizing too much time, but I will say that though the very thing Wendy mentions are selling out very quickly. So if you need to go get one like quickly.
Alexis.
I reached out to my local music store to purchase a voice amplifier the speaker is also a Bluetooth speaker, so I can put it on my cart and I'm planning on wearing a shield and a mask when I'm teaching. And so this has an earpiece with a lavalier, and it is wireless into the speaker, and then you can also use your laptop to then Bluetooth your music into it. So thank you for bringing that up, Wendy. I know a lot of us elementary folks are trying to figure out how to make that happen.
And I've got just one more little category here before I pass it to Colin's going to talk about some percussion specific needs. But one thing that has certainly been frustrating for the entire world, I think, is the fact that, leaders don't really know what to do either. And then we see the clock ticking with school getting back ready to start. We know these things are in short supply. We're bosses in our area. We know we need to get these things ordered. We don't know if we're going to end up being charged for them later, if there's a special fund. And so we end up feeling paralyzed in a sense, and that's a difficult position to be in. So pushing those people that make the decisions on finances in your group, I think is critical right now. I mean, I have been pushing my vice chancellor, and he knows, like crazy, because we are not like everyone else, as we've all been saying. Everyone else is kind of like, oh, we might need some sanitizing. I'm like, I need a truck, and I need a tent, and I need UV. I need some money, and you have to do that. You have to tell them that. You have to scream at them, and then they're like, oh my God, you guys spit. That is so right. But you have to say it 1,000 times. But I mean, I've had a lot of luck in getting those things for fall and getting them ordered early, just because I was like, we are weird, help us, So I just think you can't wait for them to come to you. and say, oh, what do the strange music people need? They're not like the others. We have to be in their face in a nice way so that they don't hate us. But you guys, we have to be in their faces and get what we need. And saying that, I'm not saying abuse the system, but if you guys remember the stimulus package, I don't know about y'all, but I raked in hard on the stimulus package because I had my list ready to go. I was like, they said, email us what you need. And I was like, and that was back when I was director of percussion. We got $85,000 worth of stuff because I had my list ready, you know? So this right now, there's opportunity to responsibly ask for things. But a lot of what I'm trying to do for safety is also things that we don't have budget for in a regular year, and we need. I've asked for, I forget what the total is, but it's like $137,000 worth of stuff. I won't get it all, but I'll get a lot of it, and then we can use it forever. I mean, we won't use maybe the UV hand, but we will for years probably. So, I mean, think about those big asks you need, and I would start with the larger things that you can't afford with your regular budget and move back from there. And I know Kelly's hand went up, but I just want to mention a few things. We're going to talk about non-traditional spaces. Tents right now, Rice University, I saw yesterday in the New York Times, had 5 tents on their campus so they could stay open. So that's a big ask. Can you use that after COVID? Heck yeah, you can use it for non-traditional performances. You can use it as long as it doesn't rip. So I think a tent is great. We mentioned the storage trailers, video, sound gear, and things that you're going to need to stream and record concerts from different places. With the, again, this is overlapping to the creative spacing a little bit, Jeff, sorry. But go ahead and ask for those things. Bundles of technology, you know, the Zoom recorders, those types of things. UV wands, I'm going to let Colin talk about that because I know he is on that UK list with me. And Colin, if you would mention maybe pianos as well, that would be good too. And then just one item that we've needed for a long time, and that students can use them to take home keyboards for piano class as well if they need to, but we just needed a bunch of keyboards because having rehearsals in all these different spaces, we need more keyboards. So good synthesizers, which it's not a Steinway, but whatever, we can use it later for other things, and kids can take it home and do their activities with it. If we have to go online, you need small amps with those, and you know the accessories that go with those. So just these packages. So it's a good time to get extra keyboards because they can be used for so many things. And I'm going to shut up because I'm talking too long, but I wanted to make sure there was nothing else here. I think the other stuff. Oh, something else we asked for were some synthetic woodwind instruments, because we always have a lot of trouble with humidity and cracking of our nice bassoons and oboes, clarinets, the really nice instruments. You know, 20 years ago, it didn't seem like the instruments were so fragile, the upper end wood instruments, but now, I don't know about you all, but we have a problem with that if they're going from hot rooms to cooler rooms and storage to others. And so we could just see $20,000 bassoons that grandma bought junior cracking. And so we made a big list of synthetic instruments they could use for these usually indoor groups that can rehearse outdoors. And I don't know if anyone has a comment on that before we pass it to Colin, but I'll get out of the way. Kelly did.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something about, kind of piggyback on what Leif was saying about wire music stands, because I'm certainly exploring that with my string orchestra. And I'm always looking for ways that we can have to do less cleaning. And so I was thinking this week how European string orchestras, they perform standing up. String students can perform really well, except cellos, standing up. And students are used to being in lessons and standing for an hour. Us conductors, we're used to being standing there for 2 hours. So I think I'm going to move toward having my students stand, and that way it's less chairs to clean after rehearsal.
That's a great point. Anybody else want to comment on any of that before we go into more specific instruments with Colin and percussion? Okay, Dr. Hill.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hill. Well, fortunately with percussion, we don't disperse aerosols or we don't spit, as Julie just so eloquently put it. So luckily, according to CDC guidelines, if we wear masks and we social distance 6 to 7 feet, that's pretty good risk mitigation for percussion. Some other things to consider, and a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about should be noted that it was detailed in the pas.org publication. This was released on July 2nd, and it's for our field, kind of the main document that we're referencing right now. So check that out. It's free to download, pas.org. So the really biggest consideration is instrument sharing and sanitizing surfaces with percussion. So when it comes to the marching season is a little different because most of us stay on one instrument for the marching season. But as we transition to the concert season or groups that, do concert year round, the biggest thing is trying to avoid sharing instruments and implements. So some strategies that PAS outlines is instead of kind of sharing the love with typical percussion assignments, maybe limit the students to one instrument per piece and maybe even concert cycle to limit sharing. Also, if your budget allows, purchase additional implements, things like bass drum beaters, chime mallets, triangle beaters, those kind of things usually are shared traditionally. And if you have the budget, maybe expand your implement choices by getting some other sounds you've wanted. This would be a good time to do it, and maybe financially an excuse to do it as well. Some ideas that I've seen, if you can't necessarily buy additional implements, some things that PAS outline is maybe have a box of dirty and clean implements. So at the end of a band class, all the implements that were used go into a box. And then we use Clorox wipes or any kind of disinfectant wipes to then just wipe the implements down and put into the clean box. And that way it's an easy way to kind of categorize which have been clean and which hasn't. So the basic cleaning protocol is really disinfectant wipes. That's probably better than spray just because you avoid excess moisture. So really most percussion instruments can be wiped down. You just have to be careful of things that are not synthetic, such as rosewood, padauk, and maybe calfskin heads. Besides those three things, most stuff can be wiped down safely. Unfortunately, there's not great research as to how to clean those three I just listed, natural wood and calfskin heads. PAS recommends UV light, but I know that can be expensive, so we're still waiting for more research on that. Another thing is that some people have recommended wearing gloves. PAS kind of advises against that due to cross-contamination. They said just hand sanitizer and frequent washing is probably a better risk mitigation strategy for that. Some other resources for cleaning. Yamaha put out a great cleaning guide. So check out Yamaha's guide on cleaning instruments. There's very extensive information in that. And then some other considerations. This may be a good time to also require students to have a larger personal collection of sticks and mallets. One thing that I do at Tennessee Tech is I require students to buy these innovative mallet packs. They're really great. They're really affordable. For high school age, there's one called the FP2. It's the innovative FP2 pack. And it's around $80, and it comes with a mallet bag, snare sticks, xylophone mallets, yarn mallets, and timpani mallets. So it's a good kind of basic collection for your percussionists. And then one other consideration that PAS pointed out is maybe not cover instruments. There's a lot of more touching when you take mallet instrument covers off and on. And so that will reduce the risk of transmission. So again, a lot of this information can be detailed in the pas.org resource. Please check that out. But luckily for percussion, we're pretty fortunate as far as the risk goes.
Colin, I've asked Catherine, who's on assist tonight and a percussionist, to go ahead and put the PAS link in the live stream. And also, I found some UV wands for $79.97, which is still pretty reasonably priced. Sorry, I'm stuttering. And so she's going to post that link as well. But people, again, have to use their own judgment and check out the safety of each device. But we can put a few samples up. And all you us out there, all the stuff that Colin mentioned, especially the UV wands too, I think can work well for piano in addition. Any other questions with percussion? There's one question from the stream. It's not percussion specific. I want to answer before we end safety, but is there a percussion question from anyone or a comment that we've left out? Okay, Jeff is going to talk a little bit about the condensation for wind players issue.
I think, as Julie said, we've been around this, so all these studies are going to be coming out. So I'm probably going to leave it at that because it's, what we knew last week, like you were saying, Julie, is different what we know this week. Because CDC is coming out with things, World Health Organization, whether we're a part of that or not, they're still going to let us read their documents, which is kind of them. They're slow. I don't know if you read this in the New York Times. They're slow because they receive 500 documents a day that they must read before they can say yay or nay to it. So I think that would slow down any organization. But we all know that these condensation issues are going to be prevalent. That's not going to go away no matter what. So that's, in my mind, the number one thing that we have to mitigate against. Whether you're going to sing it or whether you're going to, play it through a clarinet or a flute or whatever, we're still going to have, if someone has COVID-19, they could really spread this pretty quickly. But the one thing I'd say, and this kind of goes into self safety and health as well, and I'm seeing it with a lot of my colleagues at UT, and it's all well-intentioned. There's a lot of rabbit holes to run down right now, because as soon as somebody brings something up and there's a headline in a newspaper, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? And so, as part of this condensation talk, I will tell you, let it settle for a little bit, no pun intended. Let the conversation settle, so you can then say, wait a minute, they're sticking with this. And then we can talk about it. We're not going to have this 100% right in August when we go back to school. It's impossible. But we can continue to create resources and items for ourselves within our schools to make ourselves healthier and healthier with the more we know. So, again, reach out to these colleagues that we have, reach out to all of your colleagues. Please don't feel that you're isolated, because, we can. Again, I'm trying to get other people, like I said, not to run down rabbit holes, because that's the number one thing. But condensation will be an issue no matter what anybody says. And I said it earlier, do not let people above you say you're going to put classroom after classroom after classroom after classroom in the same room unless they have HEPA filters that would fly the space shuttle. It's pretty much that dramatic, because you are going to, in some way, going to start infecting people. So be aware of that. But Julie, I know we talked last week, condensation seemed like such a big issue, but now I think we have to back off of it a little bit, wait for our studies to come out. Like I said, wait for some things to settle, and we can go from there. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Jeff, what about mentioning the regular condensation that comes out of just emptying the spit valves and stuff?
Oh yeah, I mean, we've bought a bunch of stuff at our school. They just came out last night with this Colorado study talking about have them, use the spit and put it into a puppy pad. That can get a little expensive. I think as long as you're cleaning, what we're going to use is hydrogen peroxide. That was what our brass people told us to use. So we're going to have every one of our brass people bring a cloth, a clean cloth, make sure it's clean, not the one that they've used for the past 4 weeks. We're going to have the hydrogen peroxide ready, and they can wipe up that area, even if they are using a pad, because if they're not using a puppy pad, it's going to get underneath something. And so we definitely want to have them wiping that up for a variety of reasons, because, you put your feet on the ground, then you cross your legs, you put your hand on your shoe. And even though we say this can't be hand, foot to mouth or something like that, let's not believe it until we know this pandemic's over. Let's be ultra conservative with our thinking on this. That way we can make sure that we're doing everything we can do.
I think a cheaper option to what would be specifically a puppy pad is something called a Chuck's pad. I think it's CHUX. You can buy those like 250 of them for like $10. And those are going to be much cheaper than the puppy pads. They're basically the same thing that they use in hospitals when it's placed under somebody. So that would be an option to the technical puppy pads.
Thanks, Jennifer. That's really helpful.
Just doing a couple of towels or rags and making sure they have those in a rotational cycle for like one each day of the week, or maybe a different color. Because, I mean, I know we're not all worried about recycling right now, but just trying to save where we can. And that could be for brass ensembles, that could get really expensive for the pads.
Well,
a year.
And this is, this is kind of odd to say, but they really don't look like they're reusable. But if they're by the same person and there's not been that much during a short rehearsal, put it in a baggie and use it for the next one. I mean, I don't know the refraction rate of these or anything like that, but at the same time, I think you could handle more than, 1/2 hour of spit from a trumpet player.
Yeah, my kitty cat would agree with that too. So, Leif.
As I listen to Dr. Pappas, I'm thinking, I think he's picturing a junior trumpet major at the University of Tennessee, and I'm picturing a 6th grade middle school brass class. And so if I were a middle school band director, I would hear this very viable advice about everything that we've said. Don't put classes back to back. How do we make sure they clean up after themselves? These are the same kids that, well, they're middle school kids playing the trumpet. And so what advice can we give to the middle school band director who's listening to this going, oh, forget it. And I don't know what that advice is. Maybe someone wiser than I can help with that.
Well, Leif, you make a really good point, because I brought some of this stuff to our faculty, and even that junior trumpet player, you know what they say to me is, there's no way he or she will remember the stand. They'll remember the puppy pad. They'll remember these things to come. So I'm feel like we're in middle school as well. Obviously, I think there's going to be differences, and I'm glad you pointed out. That's a really good instinctive thing that you did. Is I was asked to talk about the secondary, high school and that kind of thing, because I've never taught middle school. So thank you for making that clarification for me.
We've got a few questions before we go on to the administrative section. I think we're doing okay on time. So is that okay with everyone if we take a few from the live stream? Elizabeth Emmons asks, if you don't have financial support to meet all of these safety recommendations, what are some solutions to still keep your ensemble safely rehearsing without spending lots of money out of your own pocket?
I'll start. I've been thinking about this. I'm a sole music teacher in my school. I'm the only one. And I don't have a boosters program. I don't have a ton of money from selling butter braids last year. So I am going to ask my parents. I'm just going to have a wish list. And luckily my school has amazing parents, and I know they will bring me what I ask for. If I ask for somebody that wand, I really want to buy one of those wands, Julie. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'd not heard of that. I just know my parents will support us. They want us to be safe as well. So I'm going to ask for donations and have a wish list.
As a parent of a second grader, if I got a list of things that my teachers would want, you can be sure I'm going to buy extras. Yeah.
Got another question from Catherine Sam. She says students often have instruments break during rehearsal and bring them to the teacher for repair. I hadn't thought about this. Are there any recommendations on how to handle those quick fix repairs that may occur during band class? Wow, Kat, I had not thought of that. When I was a band director, that happened all the time.
Have a set of kitchen gloves, those real quick plastic slide-on kitchen gloves, disposable, ready to go, so that you're not touching one kid's instrument and then the next with the same pair of gloves.
Excellent.
Todd Shipley, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to the idea of crowdsourcing some funds to help out, and also thought of approaching local businesses and organizations in your community. I think this is a great time to reach out to them. They're obviously struggling with these very same things, but our businesses and organizations do want to give back to the community, and they don't know what you need unless you reach out to them and simply ask. The worst they can say is no. But this may be also a great time to really kind of cultivate some more relationships with those kinds of organizations as well.
Dr. Branscombe?
Following up on that, in our community, we were told that Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, and Walmart, they've got pockets of money sitting there just waiting for school teachers to reach out and ask.
I will caution, make sure before you crowdsource that you know what your district allows. My district does not allow for crowdsourcing, so we don't want you to get in trouble. Make sure of that before you try that.
There's just a couple more. There's a comment and a question that I think will segue very well into the next area. Catherine's finishing. She's typing as fast as she can. In BCS, so I'm not sure which one that is, we've been considering ordering some simple materials for each student at the elementary level, like a pair of rhythm sticks for each student. When you total all that, it's around $3 a student. Okay, I think that's more just a comment. So just saying, do things on a budget. There's a little more coming there, but I'll come back to that one. I want to segue to the administrative portion of today with a question from, I assume this is a parent, not a music teacher, but it could be both. From Janine Smith Bell, and I don't know where Janine is. But she's saying to this call today, please let them all go online. I'm terrified to send my daughter back. And I think that that is a very prudent comment to make as we turn back to administration and political leaders. And I know Kelly and Eric are going to sort of head up this portion.
Thank you. We all know that often what we do as musicians and music teachers is not understood by people who are not musicians and music teachers. And so we are always about educating people, advocating for what it is we do. And so upper level administration, they don't always know, especially now, what we need and what we need to do it safely. And so I've also found that, like on our campus, they had task forces they got together, but nobody representing music was on any of these planning task forces. So I was really concerned that all kinds of policies would be made, but there would be no input from music. So I went about this in two different ways. One is I began to contact colleagues that were not in music. Maybe they taught social studies, history, whatever. And I would tell them about my concerns so that if they were on one of these task forces and something was being brought up, that they could speak knowing what our concerns were in music. And then I decided to make my own informal task force, my own brain trust. And I just want to encourage all the teachers out there to do this. Get some people together. They don't have to necessarily teach in your school system. People who have a variety of specializations in music. Somebody that's really good at music technology, somebody that's a choral person, somebody that's an instrumental, a private studio teacher, people that are knowledgeable, and people that you feel that you can trust to have these open kinds of conversations about these difficult things. And that's what I've been doing all summer. I just made my own little brain trust, and we've met every week, and it's been so helpful. We have brainstormed just like we're doing today, but we've also been there as support for each other. It's been a mental health thing for us, just to have the solidarity, because we all knew what we were going through. We didn't have to explain it. The other thing I think that's really helpful for us in music is that we have such great professional organizations. Look at all that TMEA has done, and ASTA and CODA and CBDNA. My husband, who teaches graphic design, he can't believe all of the resources we have had as music people, because he can't find any professional organizations out there helping visual artists. So we have this, and we can use this. So what I have been doing when I needed to present things to the administration is I've been, citing professional organizations, and I've been citing my own group of experts that I put together, and then presenting them proactively with plans. And I found that they are just so happy to get our solutions, and they're especially happy to get them if we can say that we have consulted with all kinds of professional organizations, that we've had a whole group of experts that we have been kind of vetting this through. So I just want to really encourage people to do that.
And I will just follow up very briefly. One of my soapbox areas is advocacy. And I feel like this is a time, if ever there has been a time, to advocate very wisely and prudently about what we're doing. And Kelly used a key word there, proactively advocate, because administrators are going to make a plan. And what happens too frequently is that that plan happens before those who are impacted by the plan are involved. So make your plan, whatever that plan is, whatever it looks like. Make sure it's an informed, educated plan, but make your plan and communicate that to your administrators as early as you can, so that they can make their decisions based on information they have from you, or instead of the opposite of giving information to you without your input. And what I've said earlier is your plan should include the what you're going to do and the how you're going to do it before it gets to the question of why should we allow music to do it anyway, with all of these health issues. So I just focus on the what and the how. And then we've also advocated a lot through the years on how the arts or music instills in people the ability to creative problem solve. Well, here we are in the situation where we're all musicians forcing ourselves to creative problem solve in what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And then the last thing I'll say about that is advocacy, in my opinion, starts at the classroom level. And we're seeing a lot of opportunity now to really innovate and put together some really top quality products, as well as enforcing the importance of the process. And so just making sure that that is evident and clear as proactively as possible, I feel like it's really important to keep that in all of our minds from pre-K through doctoral programs.
I really like Kelly's idea of putting together a task force or a think tank. One thing I would suggest, if you're looking at a public school setting, an elementary or a high school, middle school setting, who's the person that the principal is listening to? Who's the person that has the ear of the people that make decisions? If that's the person to befriend, that's the person, if you don't tell your story to them, then you're not going to have an advocate on the other side of it. So find that person and make them a part of your conversation, so that conversation is then being leaked out to the right party even before you present it.
I really love what the last three experts have been saying, and I want to add on, especially to what Eric said, is to be the advocate, but I would really encourage you to approach those leaders with respect, with kindness. Sometimes we build up with frustration, and we automatically assume that our leaders are like out to get us. And that might be the case for some of you, but most of the time they really have the best intentions at heart, and sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And so approach with grace and understand that our leaders are probably under the most pressure than many of them have ever been in their entire careers. So it will go a lot further if you approach them in that way, and more than likely they'll be more open to listening to you if you approach in that way. And secondly, I love what Kelly said, because she said, thanks to all these organizations. So the next time you're renewing whatever that music organization membership and you're thinking, oh, $125, I don't know if I want to do this. Remember, these are the organizations that they weren't waiting for you to beg them to do something. They were leading. And, you know, I'm thinking about some of our organizations where the scientists were telling us things that really discouraged us, right? No singing for the next year. They didn't listen to that. They said, well, let's find out more. Let's see what we can do. Let's be proactive. And so I just encourage people to remember that when you're signing up next time.
I wanted to just make one comment. Sounds like we're wrapping up the administrative advocacy piece, but the parent that commented in, and I think it's safe enough to make this comment because it's not political in either way, but it is important. We've been talking about how COVID and other racial matters, other issues that we've not brought up today, which have been a pandemic of their own, how that is creating the opportunity to be creative and explore things that perhaps should have been addressed long ago, like the process, those things we've talked about. It also is the same with diversity and inclusion and racial matters, but it is also for that parent who made that comment to us, it is about the safety of everyone, not just the kids, the safety of everyone. And we have a political system that is largely broken right now. And I know that some people are like, I'm not going to sign that petition. I'm not going to write that legislator because it doesn't do any good. Well, if your legislator is agreeing with something just to be consistent with party or solidarity with party or some other politically motivated reason, and you don't agree with that because of the safety of your young person or yourself, you need to be vocal. You need to say something, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever. We are dealing with unprecedented politics and a political style that is just absolutely maddening. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to break that down. While we're doing COVID and racial matters, we might as well attack the political system, right? Let's just get it all at the same time. So I will.
Julie, if I could
Please, Todd. Oh, yes.
Sorry there. If I could add something on to that too, as arts educators, if you are not familiar with the work of ArtsEd TN, which is a statewide organization that is advocating for all arts disciplines, including music, and TMEA works hand in hand with that organization, please make certain that you look into what they do. It's artsedtn.org and sign up to be a member. It's free to join the organization, but please know that they are doing incredible work across the state, particularly on the very things that Julie's talking about, and making sure that people have access to be able to advocate for music and arts programs to legislators, to school board members, and that as arts educators, we also develop a tool set to help do those things on our own.
Todd, would you also mention, just while you're on the topic, I was going to bring this up at the end, but you know, Kelly alluded to this and others as well, that music, while we are stressed and certainly not, we're worried as well, but we have a tradition of organizing, representing, sharing, helping one another. I can't imagine what any of us would do right now if we didn't have each other. We have national standards we can fall back on now. We have studies we can start to fall back on to give data to our administrators and then go back and say, hey, we need a music budget. We've never had one, and we need one right now because so-and-so association says we have to have that to be safe. And that's a way to carve out some opportunities in terms of budget and much other, breaking rules down that we haven't had before, by having those groups to back us up. And us not just say, we think this. No, this is what we need. This is what is the national standard. But so many of the other arts do not have that. And you and I have talked about this, and Leif and Alexis and others on calls, but could you talk about the importance right now, even of, we're protecting our own, we're music people, but we need to speak about the arts more than just music when possible?
Certainly. And this is really kind of, you know, the topic when we're talking about music and the arts, it's really everything goes hand in hand. We're so lucky that ESSA is in place, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which lists both music and the arts as part of a well-rounded education. And it always goes back to that saying that rising tides lift all ships. But knowing that we have to do this work together, we will not progress as artists, as musicians, if we tear another art discipline down. And one great place, I think, to start with what Julie was saying is looking into what are called the Opportunity to Learn standards that are available through the national organizations. Actually, all content area service organizations and learning organizations at the national level have adopted a set of these. But NAFME in particular for the music area has a set of Opportunity to Learn standards that detail the conditions that would be preferable to achieve the national art standards. And in turn, our Tennessee standards are very much based off of those national standards and tied to those as well, but presents a lot of things about learning spaces, materials, teacher training, and professional development and whatnot. But I would encourage you to check those out. It's pretty easy to find on the NAFME webpage. And again, those are called Opportunity to Learn standards.
Todd, we're going to link those, and we've also linked 10 ArtsEd Tennessee for all of our viewers out there. And as I was looking at it, I'm going to share this real quick. We've got some things that I think will help. I think Lizzie asked a question regarding funding. This will give you the tools you need to discuss with the decision makers at your school. There's an advocacy toolkit. There is some information about Title IV funds that you can discuss with any administrators, as well as data and how to contact those people, like Julie was saying, to let them know what's happening in your district. So those are linked in our comments.
Beautiful, Alexis. I think we're ready to move on to some creative spaces, which we've talked about a good bit, but there's still some items that we want to touch on. I'm going to ask Jeff to go ahead and take the lead on this one.
We have talked about this, and I think the idea is everything is open now. We say, well, we're going to take our whatever outside, we'll take it outside. We have to do those kind of things. Your creativity in your space must, though, and I believe that Colin talked about this earlier, must include the 6 foot distance and include the masking. That's a key in all of this. But when we talk about creative spaces, we can also talk about creative spaces for concerts, depending on the level of your kids, or performances or whatever. I mean, it's a great thing to get back to the comments made earlier about some of our younger musicians making some great strides. This is a chance for us, and this isn't a creative space, this is a creative pedagogy to say, you know, getting these two scales down is really huge for us, and share that. We tend to share the successes. I started with this, I don't want to end with it, but I will. You know, we talk about the home runs. Well, it's, you know, it's the bunt single where that young person can play that, you know, scale for the first time, or, you know, they hear their voice opening up or whatever, or, you know, they can learn. I've learned this with working with some New York City groups. They can learn to put the instrument together without your help. You know, we always see the good side of the arts. We don't see all of the work that goes into it. So getting back to the creative spaces aspect of it, you know, you can put a lot of what we've already talked about together today, but I think the key word there is creative. And creativity means that we have to do things that maybe have not been done before. We may have to figure out ways to do them where we have to educate people. I love the advocacy of what we do as people. I think what I do mostly is educate. I think I can advocate all I want, but I have to educate because I've got people above me who always want to know who did it earlier and how successful was that. And I'm saying, well, I am trying to be the trailblazer. So, you know, it depends on where you are in your school with what you're currently doing. But, you know, if the cafeteria is not being used, go to the cafeteria. If the gym's not being used, go to the gym. You know, creative spaces, they're really all around your school. If there's a big classroom that's not being used, I know everybody's funneling everything into the big classroom. So we're really kind of, again, we're talking about specifics in situations where we don't know what your specificity is. And that's the key. So my overarching thing is think creatively and don't be afraid, as we've said numerous times, to be proactive and ask for what you need. Because if you don't ask, I guarantee you won't get it. Because nobody's sitting there saying, how can I help the person down the hall get through this pandemic? So be creative in everything that you do. And remember, again, anything that you do is going to be, you know, one more check mark in a box for music as we go forward with this. Because I was talking with the conversation with our chancellor a few days ago, and she firmly believes, and I'm with her, that everything we learn from this is going to be of great use to us in the future. It might not be my generation, but it'll be definitely the generations of the kids we're teaching, so that we can show them. Because I know the first thing that we all did when this hit, and we did it at the university level, we took all our ensembles and we just disbanded them. And that was probably the wrong message to send. And there's no way we're going to do this at all right now. We are going to figure out ways, whether it's not performance, whether it's putting handbooks together, whether it's doing a social justice project or something, that we as people can get together. Again, just getting back to the creative part of it, and that space doesn't necessarily have to be in your building then either. Zoom is a great way to get at that. So if you have any specifics, so please reach out to us, because that's the best way for us to help you specifically. But you have the license from this moment on, if you didn't feel you had it before, to be creative and be proactive and go out and get what you need.
I think that what I wanted to add to that really relates well to what Jeff was just saying. And it's another creative opportunity. And again, everybody, he mentioned people down the hallway aren't thinking about, you know, how they can help you, but we tend to think more that way. I think music people do think that way. And then we can end up looking twice as good, and actually not looking good, just helping more people, which would actually in turn help us in the short term COVID period, but possibly the long term. So for example, you know, if you're doing non-traditional creative spaces, concerts, you know, to an audience of no one outside, and you do the drive-in maybe concept or anything like that, and let's say the crowd can't even come and listen to that. Well, how can we partner with folks in communications or the humanities that are not in music or the arts, that might have their traditional yearly project that takes 3 months? You know, they aren't able to do that. So maybe they can use their gear or their equipment. You can provide laboratory experiences and get things broadcast where they normally wouldn't give you the time of day to help you with advertising, or maybe you can work with students on a marketing strategy. I think it's getting people, when I've had meetings with the chairs on our chair's council on campus, and I don't know if this is the way with you guys, but I expect it is. And it's probably the same with all of our music educators K through 12 that are meeting with their colleagues. music seems to be light years ahead of everybody in terms of the creative ideas, because we're just so used to, like, we're tough, you know, and we're adaptable. And so I've reached out to my communications chair, who's a good friend, and he was like, oh my God, that is such a great idea, but I am not even ready to think about that in any way. Can we talk in like 4 weeks? You know, I scared him, I think, you know, because I was like, we could do this and this and this and this. So and I do get excited, and I've been too loud on this call, but I think there's so many things that by just introducing calmly, perhaps some creative ideas, that folks might not have thought of that, and they can help you, and you can help them. And it might be, again, some of those things that we end up doing, you know, maybe that in-person conference for 5 days that took us 3 months to prepare really wasn't that valuable, but this is, and it'll stick for the long term. Wendy.
A little bit, moving just a little bit, thinking about the elementary and the junior high, especially elementary. One thing that might be helpful is working with someone, another faculty member in the school. So say if you have someone and they're doing a unit on history, you join in with that and use your music to teach that area of history. And so maybe you can't have your traditional class, but you can bring in some musical examples that just kind of get you to think outside the box, or create a little skit or something like that. Because if instruments and things are difficult to get, you're going to have to think more of a music appreciation type experience, maybe for your students, or oral things that they can learn from. So that might help as well, just thinking creatively about programming and what you want to do.
Absolutely, Wendy. Todd, do you want to speak a little on arts integration, since there's been a lot of talk of that and the importance right now?
I certainly can add a little bit. Arts integration has been a strong national push, and really around the world, knowing that arts integration exists in a number of forms. And of course, we're not talking about replacing arts as a curricular subject. We certainly have our own set of Tennessee academic standards in fine arts, and they are rigorous, and we need specific and explicit instruction in the arts. But when coupled with arts integration techniques, particularly at the elementary level and into middle school, and in various ways kind of morphing into CTE and STEAM at the secondary level, but at the elementary level can provide a really great way to engage the students in arts in a variety of different art forms, not just music, but really across the disciplines, and to also strengthen what they're doing in other classrooms as well. And there's, of course, a lot of components to this, and it involves having faculty buy-in and administration buy-in to pull this off. But I would encourage people that are on the call to check out some of the great work that's going on across the state. Within the state, the Tennessee Arts Commission has some great programs that support arts integration practices, and you can learn more about the work that they are doing with some schools that have the Arts 360 grants, or some of the other avenues that some schools are integrating the arts within their subjects. But it's a great way, particularly starting in the younger grades, to build with the arts content, and also using arts as a valuable tool in other content areas as well.
Thank you, Todd. You all were getting a little short on time. It's 5:29, and the Zoom doesn't end at 5:30. We have to end it manually, but the topics we have left, I just wanted to pose to the group, and for those listening, to see, we might have already covered some, and we don't want to run too over. We have not talked about technology with Eric, and then additional ensemble concerns that Leif and I were going to address with marching band or middle school band specifically. But I think, other than possibly the travel piece, which I think we all know the answer to that, then we might have covered some of the things most concerning there, Leif. Then I want to give Todd some time at the end to wrap up with just the large document he is working on, and the contents, and when that will be released to our public, to all of our educators. So Eric, Leif, anything there in particular we need to hit on just quickly with those topics before we give it to Todd?
With live streaming, we had a lot of conversations or a lot of conversations with legal counsel, with people whose main job is all things copyright issues. And what it comes down to is, for the most part, it's okay to live stream events as long as you own the music. There is a difference between broadcast and streaming. So if it's going out over a school Facebook page or something along those lines, it's perfectly legal. Going back to, I think it was Dr. Pappas there mentioned the Brady Bunch concert. Your administrators might not understand that a Zoom choir is not all just, hey, get the kids together and sing. So there are a lot of opportunities, again, to be innovative. And for the sake of time, I'll stop there, short to say that live streaming your events is okay.
Thank you for mentioning that, Eric. Leif, anything? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll quickly just address marching band. I mean, across our state, literally thousands of students go back to their music experience on Monday this coming week. Some have already been doing it. And, you know, directors are wringing their hands trying to figure out what the right decisions that should be made are. And I'll just say, you know, no one will question your motives if the decisions you make are with the best interests of your students' health and safety. And there's no community, regardless of its individual dynamic, that will judge you for doing what's safest for kids.
Thank you, Leif. Todd, I want to give you a few minutes to talk here, and I had just one more comment, and then we have a little wrap up to do.
Okay, perfect. And I won't take long at all. As everyone, and I will just commend all of my colleagues here on the panel tonight, some incredible suggestions, very specific, that some I haven't thought of or even heard either, but there's such a wealth of information I think that's been shared tonight. And one of the things that I think all arts educators and music teachers especially have learned is that practically every organization under the sun has offered some form of guidance for the time that we're about to enter with going back to school, be it our national organizations like NAFME and other organizations like CODA and ACBA and ASTA. And those are all very granular and deal with very specific parts of our arts disciplines. And I will also state, of course, that the Department of Education has released some guidance to reopening schools, an overview guide for LEAs as they make decisions to return to school, and a series of over 20 supporting toolkits that have wide-ranging topics from academics to school nutrition to transportation and to whole child initiatives. And I think one thing that is important to understand there is that it is not meant as a way to provide, you won't find a lot of arts information specifically in those. I'll just put it that way. It's a lot of words, and you know, you may find some helpful things in there. But one thing that we have certainly noticed that's absent is some specific recommendations around the arts. And that's something that we're currently working on and trying to meet that need. So over the past month or so, we formed a focus group of over 60 people from across the state, representing all of the major arts areas, representing all locale types, urban, suburban, and rural, and also all regions of the state, to pull together this national guidance and put a Tennessee-specific lens through it so that we can make a document that will be beneficial to arts educators, and particularly our districts and school administrators in making decisions for this upcoming year. So with wide-ranging topics from things like learning spaces, program sustainability, instructional delivery, and we're very happy with the document. I think it's going to be a great resource for the state, and do know that we are working feverishly to try to get that out to the public, but we are hopeful that this time next week, hopefully early to mid next week, we'll have that ready for publication, and will either be sent out through the Department of Education or shared with one of our arts partners, and that's the Arts Ed TN organization I mentioned earlier. So hopeful to provide some guidance. And again, it's not going to be as specific as what you might find with ASBDA's recommendations for marching band or ABA's recommendations, but these will go a long way in helping educators have those conversations with administrators and district level officers that can help make those decisions, but also going a long way to helping educators advocate for their programs as well. And one of the things that we've been very purposeful with doing with the document is to make sure that it's framed through this idea of a collaborative decision-making model where the arts educator is invested and involved in helping make those decisions at the local level as well.
Todd, just before we sign off, for one more time for everyone, because they see so many things right now, for those people watching now and watching later, what will this document be titled so they can look for it?
If I can remember it myself, it will be titled Best Practices for K-12 Fine Arts Programs as Tennessee Reopened Schools. It's a very long title, but it will, again, we will send it out through whatever channels. If we're able to send it out to the department, then you'll see it come from there. If not, ArtsEdTN will broadcast it widely. And we'll also ask all of the statewide arts organizations to help spread the message, be it TMEA or our brothers and sisters on the TAEA, that's the Arts Educators Association, and any other organization that we can get to help spread that message to our over 2,200 music teachers across the state.
Thank you, Todd. And I wanted to, before Ryan wraps us up today, just to say a personal thank you. This chairs group, you know, it's been around for a long time, but boy, we haven't met like this. We've been rock solid. We're like, oh, we're busy, but we're going to make time for this. This has been a priority, and it's been a extreme comfort to us all. And I want to thank Eric, Dr. Branscombe, for his leadership and continuing to put this group together and being so completely organized and giving and just a prince, the chair of chairs. So thank you, Dr. Branscombe, for your heart and your wisdom and patience with us. Also to Alexis and Leif and Ryan, and partnering with our state music association and the kinship that we have there. I feel like we talk to these folks every day and work on projects together every day. And then, you know, Todd, also with you bringing in the state government level, it's just, there's so much more communication happening right now. And I know a lot of it we don't want, but those bonds and those channels are there forever. And they're ever increasing to different states and to different countries even. And that is yet another benefit if we can find silver linings in this. And I just want us to all think about, though, those teachers, those arts educators that are in our communities, that even though everything is so accessible right now, they can get all this information, they can connect, they can plug in if they want to, but we still have some people with their heads in the sand, and they're going back to possibly as well. And maybe they're just overwhelmed or don't know who to reach out to. And maybe they, you know, don't think we'd make time for them. So, you know, if you know those educators that are out there and you haven't heard from them, please reach out to those people in your community and just say, hey, do you know about this? Or can we have a Zoom call and talk about this? Because we're running short on time. And I worry about those people that maybe are less connected and not buying into this team mentality that we've all been so privy to enjoy and have comfort for the past few months. And with that, I just want to thank you all. Please, presenters, stay on. I know Alexis posted that, but please stay on for just a minute and we'll wrap up. We're only 9 minutes over, which is kind of a miracle. And Ryan, if you'll do our closing, please.
And before Ryan says that, I'm sorry, Dr. Fisher, to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say, if you are K-12, you've got any questions, just put those in the comments and we will look at those and get back to you. And we want to help you as much as you can, just like Dr. Hill said. So if you've got any questions after watching this, after the fact, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you.
Well, thank you, viewers, for tuning in to this special Keeping the Beat episode. We hope that we've been able to answer some of your questions and concerns as we all prepare to return to the music classroom in just a few weeks. I know it seems crazy, but it's actually weeks now. Thank you to all of the panelists for sharing their expertise and time with the audience. Please continue to check the TMEA Facebook page and website for up-to-date information on responding to COVID-19 as a music educator. The last episode of Keeping the Beat will be this Thursday, July 16th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We hope you will tune in to meet everyone behind the scenes and discover how Keeping the Beat came to be and the inner workings of running a daily live stream program. We hope that tonight's episode gave you answers to some of the questions you may have regarding returning to the music classroom this fall. Please feel free to contact any members of the panel should you have any remaining questions. Please know you are not alone in this. We are all in this together. Stay safe and keep making music.